Hey there, this is AK Blake with the Summit Realty Group. Are you a buyer trying to buy a house or an investor trying to buy a house in this market? And do you keep finding that you are not the offer that the seller chooses? You're writing offers above asking price, you're guaranteeing cash over appraisal, you're taking the property as is, you're waiving inspections, and yet you're still getting replies back as a rejected offer saying, hey, we got a cash offer, hey, we had a better offer, whatever it was. Well, you are absolutely not alone. And of course, being a real estate agent, I deal with a lot of buyers, and this is just happening pretty much across the board. Super frustrating. And buyers generally have about a three strike max is what I've been seeing, where like if they miss out on 3 deals, it's really hard to get them to write the 4th offer. And in this market, first, I did want to say that it's just one that you do need to keep putting yourself out there, and you will get a house. But if there's 10 offers on a house, you got a 1 in 10 shot, you know? So if it's always that way, you may have to write 10 offers before you get a house. Generally, it doesn't take that long, at least if you're offering aggressively and such. But I did want to, for folks that are just so tired of that, I wanted to think of a way of what can we do to get your offer accepted at a much higher rate, basically. And that's kind of what I wanted to go over today, and how I found those deals and what you can do to look for them for yourself. Okay, so we have to find where the other buyers are not going. In a hot market, buyers are almost everywhere. So I had to sit back and really think, where are these deals happening that you're not getting 10 offers? And it's ugly houses. So you should be looking at ugly houses. And when I say ugly, I basically mean houses that, well, they are ugly. They don't necessarily need to be ugly, but they do need work. And there's a few big benefits that you get by going after the ugly houses that nobody else wants. First is there is little to no competition. Again, most buyers are looking for the house that they're going to fall in love with, and they're going to write an offer on that house. And if you're taking that same tactic, you're in the boat with most buyers. And that's why you're getting so many multiple offer situations, because everybody is falling in love with that house. So again, we'll get into, of course it's ugly, so that's kind of a drawback. We'll get into the drawbacks of buying ugly and houses that need rehab and such. But if you're buying just like turnkey, ready to go houses, high competition, you buy ugly, need rehab houses, the competition goes way down. The next reason that you may want to go for one of these is you can actually make some money. So again, if you go for that house that everybody's buying and you're having to offer over asking, you're bringing cash over appraisal, you're doing everything you can, you're getting that at minimum, you're getting it at market value, and maybe you're even having to overpay to get into the darn thing. So when you get all closed up, the only equity you have in the house is whatever your down payment was. And so if you, let's say you had a VA loan and you paid over appraisal amount, you could even say that maybe you were a little bit in the negative. Again, that's arguable. I think what people are willing to pay is what something is worth. And if you've got so many other offers in, I think it's a pretty darn good sign that that was what that market value was. But that's neither here nor there. Whatever it is, you're not gaining value like that. When you buy it, you're at the value you purchase it at, and any money you put down is your equity you have in the house. But that's of course money you spent. Whereas with a rehab deal or an ugly house that needs to be fixed up, it's worth less when it's got issues. If you fix those issues, it is then worth more, and the goal would be to have it worth more than the cost of fixing those issues, obviously. So that's like the next big benefit. Again, let's get into the drawbacks of why there's not that much competition, why a lot of buyers don't want to deal with these ugly houses. The number one issue is going to be the financing. So this is a huge deal. Anytime I'm pricing a house or anything like that, financing is always in the back of my mind. So if you have nice houses that are conventionally built, generally they're going to get financed like a million different ways, with conventional financing or FHA, VA, all these different loans that all the buyers are generally using. It's not an issue. If you get something that's a little bit out of the box, maybe it's like a mobile home, those get harder to lend on. Like we have a lot of dry cabins up here that you've got to, you just got to know your lending situation, and it very much affects a price, the price of the house. And this is true across anything. If you can leverage your money, the value goes up. So if everybody had to buy houses cash, houses would probably be way cheaper, because people buying houses cash, it doesn't come across as often. But now that we have the ability to get loans, more people are willing to pay more, and leverage will drive up asset prices. So anyways, back to, for the ugly houses, when you have financing concerns, when their condition is really bad, a lot of these conventional type loans need a minimum like property, it just flew out of my mind. There needs to be a minimum of the condition, there we go, condition of the property there. And if they don't hit those minimums, your loan options get really, really small. However, there are rehab loan options, there's construction loan options, so there are options still, but they can be a little bit tough. They can take a little bit longer. So that's kind of one of the big reasons that people don't buy these ugly houses. So I just want to go through kind of what a conventional in-house construction or renovation loan would look like. And basically you get a purchase price on the house, you get a list of repairs and upgrades that you're going to be doing, you get quotes for all those from a contractor, and then the bank sends out an appraiser to tell you what the as complete value would be. So that's after you've done all the repairs, what the house is going to be worth. And the bank would, and there's a lot of details here, and this is general and things kind of change a little bit, but then the bank will tell you based on that value, let's say it's $200,000, we're willing to loan you up to 80% of that value. So in that case, it'd be $160,000. So if you bought the property for $100,000, you had $50,000 in repair, you fit it all in, you actually don't even need a down payment in that particular case. And depending on the lender, how they want to do it, sometimes they always want a little bit of skin in the game, but it is possible to do it that way. And then, you close on the house and you do all the renovations. You usually have about a year. Again, that can vary. And then you get all those repairs done in a year. You go back, they get the appraiser, the bank gets the appraiser back out there to confirm that you did what you said you were going to do as far as finishes and everything, and that it will actually meet the value that was expected. And you refinance into a longer term, like a 15, 30-year loan, and there you go, Bob's your uncle. So in that particular case, again, talking about maybe being able to make money. If you bought it for 100, put 50 grand in it, and it was worth 200,000, you have $50,000 equity at the end of it all. So there are other financing options. So that's usually for investors, or you can use it for the house you're going to move into. But there are helpful rehab options for owner occupants. And usually it's in the form of like having lower down payments. So we have one here in Alaska that's very, very similar. You do pay 5% down based on purchase price, not the whole loan. So again, if we were buying it for $100,000, and even if you had $50,000 extra you need for renovation, you're paying 5% on $100,000. So that's obviously one of the big differences. You still get a report out there. They still do appraisal in the same manner. This particular one, you don't close twice. You're just closing once, and then you have like basically 2 months to get safety repair items done, 6 months to get the rest of their repairs done, and then your loan just keeps rolling. So it's actually a 30-year loan right from the beginning. Refinancing can be kind of expensive. I mean, there's closing costs. You would just have to pay twice. So that's another little perk there. So if you are going to own or occupy, this could be a really good option for you. The last big drawback of buying ugly houses that need rehab is, of course, the time. So when you're actually closing the loan, these can take longer. They don't always have to. Here in Alaska, we have really super long closing windows to begin with. So sometimes, like that owner-occupied rehab loan I was telling you about, they seem to always stretch out a little bit longer. So when you're making your offer, the seller could be concerned about that. Again, hopefully there's not a lot of not a lot of buyers offers coming in on these ugly houses. So you do have a little bit more of negotiation power, of course. So we had one that, just to give you an idea, I had the listing side. The thing was listed for years, even with agents before me, and then I had it. And they got a great deal on the property. They did got their rehab quotes and everything in. Anyways, ended up they had about a $60,000 equity split that they would have when they completed those repairs. And it's like, shoot, and this thing sat on the market for years. Nobody wanted to touch it, and values have gone up, so maybe it makes more sense today than it ever did before. But still, it's like they were the only one. They had a lot of negotiation power. I'm talking about the buyer against my sellers. I was representing the sellers because we've been sitting so long and they're ready to go and such. So anyways, it's kind of good to see that you still can get deals in a market like this. It's still a possibility. But again, back to the point, you do have those longer times. You do have the rehab time. So if you're going with a more conventional loan, you may have the, 6 months, a year-long time to be fixing stuff up, depending on how major it is. So if you need to be living in the house, and you're able to live in the house hunky-dory, but if you don't, you have to, I've lived in the camper before. We have 3 kids, which was a little bit rough. I don't recommend that, but you may have to get a rental. You may have to stay at the house that you're currently in. So it's something to think about, where you can't just move right in. There is that time that you're kind of up in limbo there. All right, if you're still with me, that hasn't completely scared you off, if those things are not I mean, they're always something to consider because those are big deals like timelines, money, lending stuff. It's all kind of a lot to consider. But if it's something that you think you'd be willing to deal with, especially, I think the most exciting bit is actually the equity, because realistically, if you're just trying to avoid multiple offers, you're going to take more time rehabbing than you would writing multiple offers. And writing offers is way easier than rehabbing a house, but it is a benefit that you're not having to do a bunch of competition. And again, the goal will be to make some money. So if you're still with me, like here's kind of what this would look like if you want to start doing it now. So of course you need to talk to a lender to see what kind of renovation loans they have in your area. If you're here in Alaska, like I said, we have some pretty cool options, but other states like FHA and VA even has some rehab loans. Do some research. All lenders are different. They don't all offer the same programs. So if they don't have investors that are going to buy those loans, they won't do those loans. So you may have to find a mortgage broker or somebody who's able to do those loans for you. From there, of course, get with a realtor and start looking for houses. So a lot of people don't know what to look for when they're looking for those rehabs. And the thing I always hear the most is you got to get something with good bones. And it's true, I'm kind of going to make fun of it here, but it's true, you do want something with good bones, but it's really pretty cliche. It's like you don't know exactly what that means in a lot of cases. So if you're me and you've been in hundreds and hundreds of houses because you show them to a lot of buyers, you have a pretty good idea of what you want, what you like, what good bones mean to you. But you're probably not me, or you're not watching this, maybe you need to, but so if you're just the average home buyer who's not been in that many houses, what good bones, here's how I quantify it. So I kind of get a gut feeling in a way, but I don't really want to live on that gut feeling either, even someone who's been more experienced with being in houses and what you like and what you don't like. So I have a little criteria that I go through. So first off is look at the things that cannot be changed. And if you don't like those things, you don't need to look at it. You just move right on because they can't be changed. So the big one, of course, in real estate, location, where it sits. If you don't like the neighbors, if you don't like whatever, like you got a bunch of water running into the property, then there's no way to divert it or whatever it may be, just walk away from the property. It doesn't matter how good of a deal you think it could be. If it's in an area that you don't like for your purposes, whether you're going to be living there or you're going to be doing a short-term rental or you're going to be doing a long-term rental, whatever the case may be, or even if you're just going to flip it, you do need to be thinking about the neighborhood it's in because the next buyers are also going to be thinking about that. So again, location's kind of the big one, but neighbors, if you need certain utilities that you don't want to deal with like septic systems or whatever, here in Alaska and a lot of rural areas, you're going to have to deal with those kind of things. But again, whatever your concerns may be, if they're unchangeable, just walk away from it, unless it's good, of course. Then move on to step 2, and that's the if it's not economically feasible. So this is almost anything besides the unchangeables I just talked about can be fixed with enough money, but it's not always worth doing. So I kind of have this in my mind as putting a square peg into or a round peg into a square hole, whichever way that goes. It just doesn't fit. So like if you have a house that you want it to be a certain way and you need to tear out the whole floor plan to make it that way, and then it's probably you need to keep looking for a house that's more similar. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't get creative and maybe you see a multi-level house that if you added a door and a kitchen or something real quick, you'd have a duplex. And it's like, hey, great, that's good, that's being creative. And again, run the numbers to make sure it's going to make sense for your returns on your rental or if you're going to flip and sell or whatever it may be. But the feasibility, the financial feasibility is based on like how much you're doing. So the closer you can get to what you want the finished product to be, obviously the better. But there's always this balance because if it's perfect, it's not a fixer-upper, so you got to keep moving. But if it's so far away, like I have a lot of people on the spectrum. I'm someone who I want to make everything work. My wife wants it to be almost done, and it's like we really got to meet in the middle because if you're getting a good deal, you got to do some work to it. So again, getting the costs of renovation down is pretty tough to do when you're just getting started. So again, getting a realtor that knows what they're doing is super helpful. I myself have spent a lot of time like trying to pull together kind of like rules of thumb so we can go through a house and say, okay, these items are going to cost this, and it's just really broad. And it's like, all right, does that meet the criteria for you? And if it's like close, you say, okay, maybe we want to put an offer in and get the actual contractors out and get like legitimate quotes in your due diligence window and such. So, sorry, getting a little long wind here, but again, economic feasibility. So as close as possible to what you want the house to be, that's what you want to go for, without taking away, maybe getting creative and doing something that'll make it a lot of money. So, and at the end of the day, economic feasibility just comes down to, even if you bought a house for $10,000 and you had to put $110,000 into it, some people are like, oh my gosh, your renovation cost is more than the cost of the house. Well, now you've got 120 grand in, let's say it's worth 350. It's like, it's an awesome deal. So it's not so much the proportion of renovation cost to the purchase price or anything like that. It's what it's going to be worth after the fact. And again, your realtor can help you that. You can probably start helping yourself with that if you want to be a legit investor, and being able to price out houses a lot better. But again, the realtor, that's really part of their job. Like, hey, what would this be worth if I did these fixes? And they give you kind of a general idea, not like an appraisal, but it's like, hey, this could be a possible selling price for that for that house if you fix it up like you're telling me you're going to fix it up. So anyways, and then the last thing that I look for past that is like long tail expenses, especially if you're going to buy and hold, is if you have something that's going to cost you money over and over and over and you can't change that about the house. Let's say septic systems again. Here, our septic systems fail all the time. And it kind of sucks a lot quicker than they should. And it's crappy soil, it's bad weather, whatever it is, combination of those items. So you can be willing to deal with it, and you need to be aware of it, of course, and that's fine, but there's some things that maybe you don't want to deal with. So a lot of people, again, a lot of investors, they want to be in city limits, they want to have public water and public sewer, and they're not going to worry about replacing a septic or whatever it may be. So kind of making those guidelines for yourself. So those are my big three. Again, you got to get in some houses and kind of think, but if you can't change unchangeables, of course, if those don't work for you, walk away. If it's going to cost you more to fix it and to buy it, then the thing's going to be worth, obviously, walk away or offer a lot less, because sometimes sellers will go for that. I mean, we've had one, this was a cheap deal to begin with. I want to say they wanted like $65,000, buyer offered $20,000, and the guy just said, okay. It's like, oh, man, I didn't even want to write the offer. I thought it was like kind of ridiculous. And the guy wanted to sell it. So I'm not really advocating for a bunch of lowball offers. And again, your realtor can kind of help you out with that. So if something's way overpriced, I don't consider a lowball offer if you're offering 40 grand under or whatever it is. But if something is going to have 6 offers and you come to me and you say, offer them half price, I'm like, listen, that doesn't make any sense, So you got to find the realtor that's going to be willing to do that, for one, because some aren't even willing to do it, at all. They're like, I'm not going to write $30,000 under. But again, if you can look and see that it's overpriced, then it's worth a shot in my mind. I don't think anybody should be upset about getting a low offer. It's if your options were no offer or low offer, at least you got something. I always feel like, but sellers, and I can understand sellers are kind of emotionally attached to it. It's the listing agents that get really frustrated that do kind of bother me. So enough about that. So now you've got yourselves a house, you think it's got good bones, and maybe you're just getting started with this and you're wondering to yourself, what is a good deal? Okay, so a good deal is going to be different to everybody. If you've done a ton of investments, you may know the percentage that you like to get back on your return or whatever it may be. You know how long you're going to hold it and stuff, in which case you're not listening to this anyways. But if you're just starting out, maybe you've heard a bunch of different numbers and you're not really sure what's going to be good for you. So the best way that I've seen to go about this is start with a bad deal, and then look at maybe a really good deal, and then kind of meet in the middle to where you're comfortable, basically. A bad deal, super easy. The cost of the purchase and the cost of the renovation is more than the house is going to be worth after you fix it. Easy as that. So it's costing you more to fix it and spend your time and energy and all this than the thing's even going to be worth. So I would pretty much stay away from those. The only time that may be a good idea is if you know the value is there's really no way for you to know. I don't know. I can't think of a good time to do that unless you just really need to live somewhere and you had absolutely no other options, but generally you're going to have another option. It could still be better than renting for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, at least getting into something. But again, I think you're probably going to have different options. The next down from a bad deal is just your break-even deal. And again, very, very simple. Your purchase price and your renovation costs are about equal to what the house is going to be worth when you're done with those renovations. And this, I'm a little bit more flexible on, because, again, it depends on the living situation. If you're an investor trying to just like flip a house for money, this obviously doesn't make sense if you're just breaking even. So I'm not saying that, but if you're someone who's renting and maybe you have really high rental rates or whatever it is, and you can't get an offer accepted with anything else, this may be a way for you to at least get into the market. And again, so it's going to be different for everybody. Look at what it's costing you to live in your current situation. Look what it would cost you to live in this situation. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm breaking even. Yeah, it's a lot of headache, but 3 years from now, I'm gonna be happy I have this house. It may be a good deal. Now, on the making money side, I heard a lot of people, and I had investors as well, that would try to get to 70%, which means the purchase price and the renovation cost would be 70% of what the value would be after it's fixed. So they have a 30% spread, excuse me. And that's really good, and that's really tough to hit these days. So it definitely still can happen. And if you're a seasoned investor and you're looking around and you've maybe even got multiple markets that you're looking in, then again, you're probably not listening to this to begin with. But if you're someone who's just starting out, that may be a pretty high bar to clear. And it would be awesome. I mean, the more the merrier. If you have something that's you got a 30% span on and it's a $300,000 house, that's 90 grand of equity that you've made there. Another one that people try to hit is at 80%. Again, same idea, but you're instead of 70%, you're at 80% because a lot of construction loans will lend up to 80% of the end value. So hopefully you would not be needing to bring very much down payment in that particular case. So that's kind of more a financing goal, but also a good rule of thumb. Then you've got 20% equity, which again, on that same $300,000 house, that's still going to be 60 grand. So again, not bad, but again, if you're just moving in somewhere, you need something, 10% not bad, 5% not bad. I mean, if it's a ton of work and you're only gonna make $500, that's one thing. But if you're gonna make, again, in that similar case, 10% is still 30 grand. And that's a pretty good wage for a lot of people, so it's not the end of the world. I would more look at maybe the number that goes in your pocket compared to the time that you're gonna spend with it, and see if it's worth it for you at that time. And it may not be a good deal for you after you've bought 3 houses, but maybe if this is your first one, it's like, hey, this gets me into the door, this gets me a place to live, this gets me some experience, which is great too. I mean, you're getting paid to learn in a way, if you're in the positive there. So anyways, it's very much dependent on you and your position. And let's say you make an absolute ton of money in your normal job, and 30 grand does not seem worth it for 6 months of work, then I mean, that's going to be up to you. But maybe for a lot of people, even myself included, it's like, hey, if you told me 6 months of dealing with contractors and stuff, which to be honest can be a headache, is going to net you 30 grand, I would do it. And the percentages, be damned basically. Like, it depends on where it's at, of course, and how much I'm investing of my own cash. There's other considerations, of course, but maybe just keep that in mind that you don't need to have a home run your first time. If you get one, great, but maybe you got a single, a double or triple or whatever it is, where it's pretty good and it's going to make you some money and you're going to learn some stuff. Especially if you want to be an investor and you want to do this long term, learning about it is going to be pretty awesome. So you made it with me this far. That's pretty much an overview of what that would look like. The details are going to be very specific to your location, very specific to the house itself. And yeah, to kind of briefly recap what you need to do, you got to talk to a lender, you got to talk to a realtor, and you got to start looking at houses, ugly houses. But yeah, I hope this is helpful. Hopefully you can get an offer accepted instead of begging on your knees to the sellers.